Hey there, we welcome you into another edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. The beloved Goon is under the weather. We'll leave it at that for today. Hopefully we'll be back and ready to go on Thursday. Lots to get into today as Chris Buganani fills in for the Dear Goon today. And again, just a whole lot to get into. Penn State football, the championship game last night. It is looking all but a certainty that we are going to have that Eagles-Steelers Super Bowl that we've longed for. It seems like a pretty sure bet now.
So I have a ballsy prediction.
Yeah.
Do you want me to make it at the top of the show, or do you want me to wait?
Let's lead off. I like leading off.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I am 100% serious. This is not a joke. This is not a novelty prediction. I mean it. You can hold me to it. Pittsburgh Steelers are winning the Super Bowl this year.
I would love to see you be
Do
right.
you want to hear my rationale?
I would love to hear it, and I'd love to jump on board.
Okay, so first of all, I'll do the shakiest of the three pillars of my Steelers winning the Super Bowl prediction.
By the way, I really don't think there's anything absurd in terms of an NFL prediction because we have seen the freaking Detroit Lions handled the Arizona Cardinals, right? I mean, the whole thing on any given Sunday this year, as much as any, does hold true. So I don't think. I mean, yes, I'm being facetious when I say the Eagles Steelers Super Bowl, but do I think it's absolutely out of the realm of possibility? I don't, because again, first of all, you don't know what's going to happen on the injury front, right? I mean, if an Aaron Rodgers goes out on the first play, that changes the entire complexion of everything, as we saw with Penn State football and the Iowa game this year. I mean, things change in a hurry. So not knowing what is going to happen in any of these games, again, I don't think there's this wide, unbelievable gulf between the Packers and the Eagles and the Titans and Chiefs and the Steelers on either side. And again, so I think anything is within the realm of possibility. I will be very pleasantly surprised if the Steelers win the Super Bowl. But I'm very interested to hear your rationale.
So here you have it. In fact, I'm going to throw in a bonus leg. We're going to make it a four-legged stool.
Excellent.
Okay, so number one, again, the most tenuous. After the path Pittsburgh had to take to make the playoffs, there's just no other way it can end at this point. Right?
Karma is lining up for whatever reason.
There are just sometimes you look at a guy and say, he was born with a horseshoe up his ass, and that's the 2021 Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, so that's number one. Number two, again, in order from least to most, or most to least tenuous. Did you ever see the movie Highlander?
If I did, I'm not remembering.
Okay, Sean Connery is like an 80s, kind of a bad, it's sort of sci-fi adventure flick. Anyway,
I don't think I actually ever did.
So the plot of Highlander basically is that there are these immortals that walk among human beings, and they have been fighting this war against each other for eons. And the way it works is that they're like Scottish clansmen, right? That's why it's called Highlander. And the catchphrase of the movie is there can be only one, just like there can be only one Super Bowl champion.
Yeah.
And the way they are working towards there just being one immortal, and they fight each other, and if you cut one of your fellow immortals' heads off in combat, you absorb his power. And so you just work your way up the ladder, just like a playoff bracket.
Yeah.
And if there is one team for the Pittsburgh Steelers to fear in the AFC side of the playoff bracket, especially, it's Kansas City, right?
For sure.
And we're going to answer the question of, can they stand up against the Chiefs, a team that still looks great, has looked very strong down the stretch, has one of the best quarterbacks, but at the same time has looked vulnerable. And as an Eagles fan, I can tell you, you are on thin ice when you are betting on Andy Reid in the playoffs. That guy has won a ton of playoff games. and he has lost some inexplicable heartbreakers. But just like in the Highlander movie, if Steelers can get this win, they're going to answer their biggest postseason question, at least in their conference playoffs, right out of the gate. And it's like two Highlanders facing off. They can cut off Patrick Mahomes' head. If they can slay Kansas City, they're going to absorb their power. That is momentum going into the second round. And a host of potential playoff scenarios against teams you would have to feel a lot better about Pittsburgh facing than beating the Chiefs. So we're going to know right out of the gate, they're either going to be one and done, or all of a sudden people are going to be like, man, Bucanani might not be crazy. They might be winning it all.
Yeah, and listen, the playoffs is definitely a whole different deal. And I will say that the reason I do think the Steelers have a fighting chance, well, actually a couple of things. One is I do love the fact that it's the Sunday night game. For whatever reason.
Prime time.
Yeah, but Mike Tomlin and the Steelers historically from Chuck Noll on, but Mike Tomlin and prime time football, it is ridiculous how well this team consistently over his tenure has shown up, even in years where they've struggled mightily in the primetime games. But the two things that really worry me is that the Steelers, you go back to those Bengals games, they weren't competitive. I mean, Cincinnati blew their doors off, and the same thing with the Kansas City game from the regular season. Now, postseason is a whole different animal, and there's no question about it. And I do like the fact that, you have Ben Roethlisberger in the last ride, and everybody, the way the team rallied around Jerome Bettis when the Steelers were also the last seed and ended up winning the Super Bowl. I do think this team, one, feels like it's playing with house money, right? I mean, it is unbelievable the way that ended up on Sunday. The least likely of the three things that they needed to happen, right, was the one that there was never a doubt from the get-go, which was just crazy. The Jaguars crushed the goal.
By the way, thank you so much. Eagles fans are so happy. You guys, that was a double whammy. We needed Indy to lose. And look, it ultimately ended up being less messy because the Dolphins did beat New England. But Philly fans needed
Although
Pittsburgh.
They tried.
They did, yeah. Philly fans needed Pittsburgh to win to get the best draft position. And look, let's just be vindictive. To ensure Carson Wentz wasn't going to get to the playoffs, which we're all kind of enjoying. So, that was great. It was a moment of harmony in our household where my wife was rooting for Pittsburgh and Jacksonville for Pittsburgh postseason scenarios, and I was rooting for Pittsburgh and Jacksonville for draft position and vindictiveness scenarios. And it was great. It was great. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was united behind the Jaguars on Sunday afternoon.
So you have this banged up Ravens team that the Steelers were playing. Yep. You have Indianapolis. To me, that is still absolutely inexplicable. What happened over the last 2 weekends of the regular season for the Colts? They needed a win in one of those two games. This was a Jacksonville team, again, that got absolutely blown off the field by the Patriots a week earlier and had nothing to play for, really, at all.
By the way, it didn't even play themselves out of the number one pick in the process because the Lions beat Green Bay. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now, Green Bay without Aaron Rodgers, but still. I mean,
but how did the
what
Colts?
A Sunday.
And again, it's the NFL, so I get it. Anything can happen. But how are you not competitive with the Jaguars? I mean, how is that game out of reach in the fourth quarter? There's no doubt about the outcome.
There was a reason we traded him, and a reason we could only get a second and a third round pick.
True enough.
Although now a first round pick.
Boy, it just is. I cannot imagine being a Colts fan. So that is again, to me, by far the least likely of the three things that the Steelers needed to happen happens. And then the Steelers, now mind you, I'm up at Rec Hall calling the Penn State dual meet here with Indiana, and I'm checking the scores, and it seemed like it was 10-6 Baltimore forever. Is what it felt like when I'm looking at the phone. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just the for whatever reason, this is going to be 10-6, and to blow the opportunity when Jacksonville does what it needed to do is just heartbreaking.
Roethlisberger do that to Baltimore so many times. There has to be a part of you who's just like,
So then I do see it's like, oh, they're up 13-10. I'm like, oh man, fantastic. They're going to win this thing, and then we get to the one commercial break. I'm looking down, it's like 13-13 overtime. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So then I'm kind of on pins and needles while calling the rest. I'm looking at this, and it's like still tied. So I get out to my car. It's been an adventurous several days on the personal front. So I get out to my car, realize I don't have my wallet. I have a parking pass, but I forgot to put the right license plate added to it. So I have to wait for my wallet to be run up to me on Sunday afternoon. So I'm sitting there just listening to this game, the Steelers game. And of course, the Steelers ultimately get the win. And it's like, okay, now you just need somebody with this thing. So I'm watching the game, just hoping that one team or the other will take control on Sunday night. And I actually dozed off for a little bit in the second half and wake up in time to watch pretty much the entire overtime.
Yeah, I want to have a separate conversation about that game. That was one of the most amazing things I have seen in my life, and I'm so glad I didn't have anything riding on it.
Oh my gosh! Well, as somebody that had something riding on it, it was agonizing.
Insane.
And then ultimately,
you're telling me they're not going to win the whole thing now? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think it's
Jake Taylor in Major League win the whole effing thing.
Well, and there are a couple of things. So turnover, I do think what you're hoping if you're a Steelers fan, right? And you saw with the Alabama-Georgia game last night. I mean, turnovers play a huge role. And I will say Patrick Mahomes has, at times this season, right, shown the ability to turn the ball over
absolutely.
More than he certainly did last year en route to the Super Bowl. So, and the Steelers have had when they've needed turnovers or sacks or big plays on defense, and I mean absolutely desperately needed them, they have gotten them this season. And obviously, Hayward and Watts are pretty good places to start. Fitzpatrick is a guy that obviously, with the pressure that those guys can get, can make those big plays in the secondary. So, again, I don't think it's without I think it's within the realm of possibility that the Steelers get hot and turn this thing on and send Big Ben out the way Steelers fans would love to see it.
So that's my third leg, okay? So narrative is a thing in sports. It absolutely – sometimes things just come together. Came together for Georgia last night. We thought about that too.
Yeah.
Sure. So think about the serendipity of Ben Roethlisberger's career coming full circle in a year where he could now, because of this unbelievable confluence of unlikely circumstances, he could go to the Super Bowl and win as a wild card team, needing to win 3 straight road games as part of a team where he is a complimentary game manager piece, led by a stifling defense with a Hall of Fame or future Hall of Fame type talent at its front. And at the end of the game, a great Pittsburgh Steeler rides off into retirement. Now, you're not going to tell me that there isn't some symmetry on the line here with Ben Roethlisberger. And look, I think if Ben Roethlisberger is in the conversation for top 10, this is a serious thing. I talked this through with a friend of mine. Top 10 quarterbacks in NFL history. He's in the conversation. If he could somehow win the Super Bowl this year, he'd be in the conversation for top 6. There's some untouchable names there, right? You're Montana, you're Brady. After those two guys, it starts to get muddled, and then you can actually start having some knife fights over who belongs where. And the amazing stuff.
The one thing about Roethlisberger is he did do it in a very unique way, right? Like there is not another player that was as difficult at the quarterback spot that was as difficult to bring down I'm talking about it in his prime.
Well, no, Jared Lorenzen would like a word. He didn't quite put up the same stats.
Not exactly.
But if I had to choose to tackle one of them, I would actually have to. I would have to opt for a Big Ben.
Probably true.
Jared Lorenzen, Google him. By the way, R.I.P. Jared Lorenzen, but Google him.
But listen, I think that the fact that he did it in a very unique way, right? That there was just a different presence about him in the pocket and what he was able to do in extending plays. And the one thing for years there was that the Steelers in third and long were as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than if you got them in third and short because of his ability again to break out of there and get the ball down the field where it needed to be. And I will say that I do like the fact that the Steelers and that offensive line has, it's very much a work in progress, but it has gotten better. And I do think, that running game now is something that can produce here as we've seen throughout the second half of the season.
That's another little bit of symmetry. In 05, we had the young quarterback and the retiring Hall of Fame running back. Yeah, that's the other way around.
No question about that.
I've got to be talking to at least a few people.
Yeah, I would love to see it. I just Arrowhead though, and Mahomes, and again,
that's another parallel.
Defense, though.
So remember, now it was the second round, but Pittsburgh had to get through one of the best teams and best quarterback in the AFC versus a team that had kicked their ass only a few weeks earlier.
This is very true.
Now, listen, if somebody on KC's wife stabs them this week, then you really just go to Vegas and put the mortgage.
I will say if Big Ben is making a touchdown-saving tackle in the fourth quarter Sunday night, I am going to be jumping off the couch.
Well, no,
it'll be props.
It'll be Roethlisberger who turns the ball over, and
Najee Harris will make the
By the way, as a side note on Ben Roethlisberger's career and how he won and where he sits in the pantheon of great NFL quarterbacks. An interesting thing about Ben Roethlisberger, I brought this up with a couple Eagles fan friends when we were talking about Jalen Hurts, is that Ben Roethlisberger is one of the few players I can think of who had like two distinctive phases of his career in terms of the way he evolved as a player. Because that first Super Bowl he won, he was really more of a game manager. Like he did not play well in that.
There's no question
at all.
No.
But by the time he won his second ring, he was one of the best pure passing quarterbacks in the league. Like he turned himself into, through whatever process he followed and through coaching and scheme, he transitioned into being for several years an elite passing quarterback. I think that's an underappreciated and to me, it's just sort of an outside observer, fascinating aspect of his career.
Yeah, I do think I think he is just a fascinating study for anybody, and both with the personal stuff and the and again I've said it before, and I don't, without getting into the legal stuff because I don't know what there, but he clearly was enjoying the party scene. I mean, there's no question about that. And listen, if I'm a first round pick of a organization like the Steelers, and I'm coming from a small school and I'm hitting the big time, I did my fair share of partying without any of that. I think you understand why you're going to enjoy that to the degree that he did. But I do think, and the motorcycle accident we talked about a little bit last week. I mean, and again, I don't know him personally, and I don't have any inside sources, but it feels like, and at least as a Steelers fan, I'd like to believe that it's true that he has matured. He found God, is, again, from everything you read and what he says anyway, and now is at least publicly, because again, it just, ever since Tiger Woods, you just get there is, and I get it, that there's images that are put out but it sure, I mean, it really does feel like this is a guy that has grown up a whole lot off of the field, and truly is a leader and a guy that teammates are gravitating toward, not just because of his ability on the field, but because of the way he is now conducting his life and everything he's been through. And I think he is a guy that can reach out to younger guys and say, listen, I've been there. This is, you don't want to go down this path because it's difficult.
It's been fun to watch the bond develop between him and Pat Fryermuth over the course of the season. You really get the sense like he took Pat under his wing out there.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting with him and a lot of the relationships. I think the way, again, there's a mutual respect, and I do think that one of the things the Steelers have going for them is I do think this is a team. It's not as talented a team as we've seen over the years with the Steelers, which is not to say they don't have talent. Again, Hayward and Watson go up there with the best of the best in Steelers history. Roethlisberger, in my mind, and I love Terry Bradshaw, but there's no question. In my mind, Roethlisberger is the best quarterback by pretty substantial margin in Steelers history. And again, Najee Harris we'll have to see how the career plays out, but I mean, this is exactly the type of start that you were hoping for if you're a Steelers fan. It certainly has the feel of a guy that is going to be a big-time running back. And, Deontay Johnson, you go down Fryermuth. I mean, so there is talent there for sure on the Steelers roster. I just don't know that it's as deep and in some of the key spots.
Was it Heath Miller, a rookie in 05?
Of playmakers. He was. So, yeah.
So, look, all this stuff I presented, whether you find it compelling or not, it's all sports writer nonsense. Okay, it's sports writer nonsense. Practical stuff on the field. What is a good formula to force upsets and win in the postseason, run the ball, control the clock, make clutch plays, pressure the passer, and force turnovers?
Yep.
Pittsburgh can do all four of those things, right? When they are on, they can do all of those things very well. And again, you get through KC, you manage to find some way to, on any given Sunday, we're talking about a crazy season, you beat Patrick Mahomes. Is there another quarterback in the AFC who really terrifies you?
Not at this stage.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, and I do think that there is something to be said for the camaraderie, and I do think one of Mike Tomlin's greatest strengths, and I know it's an ongoing debate in Pittsburgh. It's just so funny to me that the fan base, I think, has less respect for Tomlin than just about every opponent, national analyst. I mean, like Tomlin is always mentioned nationally as one of the top coaches, and I think rightfully so. I mean, Again, I don't know exactly where you want to rank him, but he's not Belichick, but to me, he's as good as anybody else other than him. And again, saying you're not as good as Belichick is like saying, a college football coach isn't as good as Saban. It's like, well, okay, you're probably right, but that's because there is no way. It's Ben Roethlisberger is not as good as Tom Brady. Well, right, but there's not a quarterback out there in the history of the game it's been as good as Tom Brady. So, yeah, you're right. It's not the very best, but pretty darn good at the end of the day. But what I think Tomlin's one of his greatest strengths is, and I do think the reason the Steelers are in the playoffs is that this team does have a way of galvanizing for one another. And I do think they are a close-knit team, and I think you've seen it. I mean, I think when you listen to the words of Roethlisberger, and he talks about how appreciative he is of Harris and of all the work that Deontay Johnson did in the offseason and how he came back. And I think you see these different relationships and obviously the respect that everybody in that organization, but certainly all of the guys on defense have for Cam Hayward and just the way he conducts himself. Obviously, again, Watts is having just a historically good season. So, yeah, there's enough pieces there, and there's enough veteran leadership guys that have been through this And I think there's enough belief in that locker room that, again, to a large degree, I think that the two things that the Steelers can kind of rally behind here is, one, nobody thinks we're going to do anything. Again, playing with house money. And as a professional athlete, that is a wonderful position to be in. That is not one you get to often when it comes to the playoffs.
I promise you I will not notify the Steelers organization of my predictions.
Yes.
So no one will get complacent. Okay.
And two, I do think, again, they obviously would love to have the storybook finish here for Ben Roethlisberger.
And defense, man. Like, again, to me, like, you throw all that stuff out there, and it's all interesting. But, man, like, if you can play lights out defense, you're going to have a chance in the fourth quarter of games.
Yeah.
And then, you look at what happened against Baltimore. Ben Roethlisberger at this stage of his career, like a lot of older folks, has his good days and his bad days. Right?
Yep.
His good moments and his bad moments. He can look like slop for 3 quarters, and all of a sudden old Ben, absolutely. And all of a sudden the old Ben comes out.
Yeah.
And if the defense has kept you in the game until the one drive where the old Ben Roethlisberger instinct kicks in, that's all you need.
Well, I'm
you
telling you,
finish with 4 points.
That fourth
which
down,
almost didn't happen in that.
Yeah, that fourth down pass
Raiders-Chargers
was
right, crazy.
Man, I'm listening to this thing. It's like, all right, get the third down, and they don't make that play. I'm like, oh my god! And then it was insane, heretofore unseen level of improbable absurdities to get Pittsburgh into the postseason. Ben Roethlisberger's last season, you're telling me that's going to end with an ass whooping by Kansas City? I don't think so. All right. Well, you sold me. I'm all in. Steelers are winning.
I remember now. Granted, this was in the Alex Smith era of Kansas City Chiefs football, but I remember I was in a suite at Pagula watching a very entertaining Penn State Wisconsin game, and it was wild card round or divisional round. I can't remember. But I think it was the Titans and the Chiefs. Somebody was playing the Chiefs, the Colts, I don't know. And, of course, everybody was picking Kansas City. They were like the 2 or 3 seed. And I'm telling everybody, I'm like, look, don't pay any attention if they go up in the first half. Like, don't listen. Whoever, Indy was Indy. Indy's winning this. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, KC's great. Like, they're up by 2 scores. I'm like, just trust me. I've seen a lot of Andy Reid in the postseason. This is not going to end well. And sure enough, the Chiefs lost the game. I love Andy Reid. Okay, I'm not one of those Eagles fans who hates Andy Reid. I'm a huge Andy Reid fan. I was pulling for him to get his ring. I'm thrilled that he's a Super Bowl champion. But Andy Reid is Andy Reid, man. Like, do not be surprised if the wheels come off on Sunday night. That's all I'm saying.
I'm hoping that is the case. And truthfully, as a fan, I really am just happy. I will be okay. Again, I'm just speaking for me, not my friends and not anybody else. But if the Steelers do get waxed by Kansas City, I'm okay with it. I still think this has been a remarkable season, and I think is a testament to what Mike Tomlin does as a head coach. And I still think the Steelers are going to be in the mix again next year. Obviously, they got to figure out the quarterback situation, and that to me is obviously by far going to be the most intriguing aspect of the offseason, whenever that offseason comes here for the Steelers, is how they go about addressing that quarterback.
I will tell you what, though, on that note, I think unless they can put together a pretty substantial trade up, the Kenny Pickett scenarios are out the door at this point.
Yeah, but I'm not sure, and everybody, I keep I'm reading a lot of, all of the stuff I can get my hands on about the Steelers situation, and that, there are so many people that are, well, the Steelers aren't going to do this and aren't going to do that because they never have. Well, again, there's a first time for everything. I think this is a situation where the Steelers could, if they, and I don't know, I like Kenny Pickett. I haven't watched enough of him, and I can't sit here and tell you that I have enough scouting knowledge to. By God, that game definitely translates to the NFL. I like the idea of it, and I like the fit, obviously. Mm-hmm. But if the Steelers do think, listen, yep, that is a guy that could. No guarantees, obviously, but I mean, if you truly think, yeah, that's a guy that could be the next long-term solution, then I think you are in a position right now where you can make a move. Now, who would you give up? I don't know, and that's again always
it's going to have to be becomes
dicey. Yeah. And again, right now with the camaraderie that I think this team has, and it's interesting because there are Steelers analysts that will tell you that, yeah, this team is not close to winning a Super Bowl, not this year and not anytime in the near future, with or without a quarterback. And so they're advocating, I think the majority that I'm reading are advocating just go through the draft, or don't try to do something crazy where you're disrupting the locker room. Just keep the building process. And I'm just not sure. Again, I think you've got to be careful with the. And I don't know who it is that I would put on the table, but I don't think you rule out trading for, and trying to get an Aaron Rodgers or a Derek Carr, or trading up to get a Kenny Pickett, just because they haven't done it, and that's not the traditional mold. Again, I think if you feel like, hey, we can give up this player or that player, and this could get us over the top. And again, there's moving pieces every year, right? It's just like we keep talking about with college sports, but in the NFL, nothing's stagnant. So you can go out and get a veteran offensive guard. Right. You can go out. I mean, so you can get a couple of, and I don't think there are many pieces away. And after listening to you, maybe no pieces away. But building for the future. I mean, really, I don't think this is like a massive rebuilding project going on in Pittsburgh. There are, again, a lot of pieces that are there in place. Yeah. And like every team every year, you've got to look at, some spots where you may be aging out and get some young blood in, and some spots where you need to upgrade. But again, in my mind, especially when you look at the AFC, I don't think this team and this roster is that far off from being a team that can contend. And
look, I don't think any team is in the modern NFL.
Yeah, I think that's true. Now, I do think, in the division, and listen, we'll see. I mean, Lamar Jackson is this a precursor of things to come on the injury front? Who knows? And I'm not wishing or projecting it. And listen, at the end of last year, I think everybody was on board that Baker Mayfield was clearly the future of the Browns, and now that's been topsy-turvy. At the moment, it feels like Joe Burrow is clearly the future of the Bengals, and I think is on his way to having a spectacular, consistent NFL career. But again, he had the injury last year, and you don't know. These things can turn very quickly one way or the other. But it feels like the Steelers, need to find that next quarterback pretty quickly here in order to stay in the running here for at least upper echelon of the AFC and in contention for AFC North titles in the next couple of seasons. Let's turn our attention to Penn State basketball for a minute, just because we keep talking about it, Booch, and I just think Micah Shrewsbury continues to push all of the right buttons, and it was the result was disappointing because it felt like there was a win there after the way that they performed. In that comeback, making what was it, 7 or 9 straight shots, whatever that was, in the second half when they actually took the lead over Purdue, and then Purdue ultimately wins it. But listen, that I don't know how the season is going to play out, but that is a team that can certainly be in the Final Four at the end of the year. I mean, that is a legit big-time basketball team.
Purdue won that game because they have a much deeper, more talented roster than Penn State has. Right?
And I just think Shrewsbury, again, he does have a real feel for how to give his team the best chance.
Yep.
The way they mixed it up defensively against Purdue, and I think they had Purdue kind of second-guessing some things. And listen, they have enough guys that can get hot, as we saw in the second half, to be a threat in just about any game. To me, this is a big one tonight for Penn State with Rutgers. I think this is a game you need to continue to build on the good vibes that are out there. And I think
good Rutgers team.
A really good Rutgers team. And I think at home right now, this is a game you need to take care of business. I think I saw Penn State's like a 2 or 3 point favorite. And I mean, this feels like it's a game that should come down to the buzzer tonight. But if Penn State can get this one, again, you're back to 500 in the conference. You're winning the games that I think you're supposed to. You're being more competitive, I think, in the games that you're not supposed to. And I think you've at least snuck out at least a game. And tonight, I think, would be another one on the toss-up front. Again, the 3 losses to this point are to probably the 3 best teams in the conference, right? I mean, Purdue, Ohio State, and Michigan State are all pretty darn good basketball teams. And I think any of those 3, could get hot here in the postseason and find themselves in the Final Four. So, the fact that those are the 3 losses, the fact that you went to Northwestern, again, getting any road win is notable in the Big Ten. And I think that's a good Indiana team they beat. And if you can get the win tonight again against Rutgers, again, to me, it's as good a vibes as we've had around this program at the very start of a coaching tenure as any I can remember. And with the transfer portal now and with what, I think young kids have to be looking at this and saying, and Penn State is a named school. I get not in basketball, but I think you still get in the door with a lot of high school kids in Pennsylvania and the surrounding states, just because you're the Penn State name. And if you look at this season, and again, we'll see how it plays out, but to this point, I think there's a lot of reasons for top-level recruits to say, you know what, I could be part of the equation that gets this thing to another level at Penn State and really kind of cement a legacy for myself and for that program. And I think Shrewsbury, again, to this point, has just continued to push all the right buttons. I've just been very impressed with the coaching, with the way this team competes. And listen, that game against Purdue was one that you could easily, and I don't think anybody would have, if they had lost by 20 and never rallied in the second half, right? I think you just say, well, yeah, that's a great Purdue team, and no shame in that. You pick up the pieces, but this team kept battling, kept putting the ball up. That obviously were struggling for a while finding baskets, and then they got really hot, and you felt like, oh my gosh, they might actually pull this thing off. But I think that kind of grit, determination, and the ability to just keep sticking with it is going to pay big dividends as this thing moves forward for Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, dare I say it, Ironhead, I am on the cusp. Oh, there you go. But on the cusp now of being more optimistic about the long-term prospects of Penn State basketball than I am Penn State football. Which, by the way, all due respect to Micah Shrewsbury, I like you, I continue to have my initial reaction that it was a great hire, reinforced. It says less about him and more about my feelings about the state of Penn State football going forward.
Yeah.
An 11-11 result of the last 2 miserable seasons.
Yeah.
But I listen, I feel like the vibe has been very positive on the show. I don't want to drag it down by talking about our football.
Well, but listen, I do think that the transfer portal, they got the wide receiver. I'm awful with remembering names when we get these kids first in, but thank you. if they can have the type of success this season that they had last year in the transfer portal, and I get this success they had in the transfer portal resulted in a 6-loss season, so
right.
I understand.
But imagine if they hadn't had that success,
the individuals,
like a 4-win season.
the individuals that they brought in, but regardless of how you want to look at it, this upcoming season, I think, is as big and as pivotal as any James Franklin has had, certainly since taking over here at Penn State.
I mean, probably more so if Penn State would not have to pay the cost of effectively 2.5 #1 recruiting classes at Texas A&M to fire him, right? So, like, they go 1-11 next year. What's going to happen?
Yeah, but listen,
nothing.
But I think Singleton is a guy that, and listen, I mean, you never know until it actually happens. But my God, I mean, what he is doing and the ability that he clearly has, I do think this is a guy that with an average offensive line can do huge things because he breaks tackles.
Yep.
He has the speed. I mean, he is as close to a sure thing as I can remember in a while for Penn State at that spot.
I agree.
And I think, with that, the question there's a bunch of questions. The biggest question for me is how the quarterback offensive coordinator dynamic moves forward and what type of improvement and how effective that is next season. Because it should be effective, right? I mean, these guys now have had a full season under their belt. Clifford has gone through everything and then some throughout his career. But it needs to result in something special next year. And again, I keep talking about it, and I've had the conversation with friends, and I keep throwing it out here. I don't know what success and a good feeling next season means in terms of record, or it's like I'll know it when I see it. It could be 9-3, and if it's really competitive game with Ohio State and that Auburn game to me is really intriguing next year because now Auburn is. I don't know. Even the Purdue game. I mean, I don't. Always tough when you're opening up in the road, which is what it seems Penn State does every year in the Big Ten since joining the conference. It's just absurd how that has played out. But that early season schedule is much like this past season. It's not easy, but the other side of that is they got off to a great start through that tough. I mean, because we talked about it. There were very worrisome, troublesome games. Obviously, you start off at Wisconsin. Right away, that's a concern. They got the win there. They got the big win over Auburn. I mean, it felt like, okay, this thing could go either way at the start of the season, and they built all that momentum. And again, the injury to Clifford, to me, just changed the entire complexion of the season.
Yep.
And how the quarterback situation plays out next year is obviously going to be part of the equation here for Penn State as well. But again, I don't know what exactly it is I need to see to start having good feelings again about the program and the direction it's heading. I know 5 losses is not going to be it, but I don't know. Could a 9-3 team have me feeling good again? I think probably, certainly 10-2 or anything better, obviously, is going to have you feeling very good. But with that, the schedule they have next year, again, and all of the pieces being where they are, I don't know. It's just I'm really curious to see what happens here with the transfer portal. I'm curious to see. I do think Mustipher coming back is big just in terms of getting some consistency and that the leadership component on the defensive line. The depth there obviously has to improve, and the play in the trenches, as always at any level of football, is absolutely critical. And that's still, to me, the area where there is a gap right now between Penn State and the top programs in the Big Ten, and probably an even bigger gap there when you look at the Georgias and Alabama. Which, by the way, let's transition to that game just for a bit here. I didn't see. I saw maybe 2 drives of that game, but I listened to a good bit of it, and a couple of things about it. I don't know. I mean, what else are you going to do? It's just the way things play out. I do think when you have 2 teams that are pretty even talent-wise, and I think those 2 teams are, when you have a rematch, right, the edge, and we talk about this in wrestling a good bit. When one guy beats another, now I know that I can beat you, right? If we wrestle or we play football and I win, and I know the formula that I use to beat you, you are going back, and now you are the one making adjustments.
Right.
And again, if we're pretty similar, pretty close, there's just an inherent advantage. And again, it's just, I mean, I don't know what anybody can do, and I'm not, but there is an advantage to being the team that lost. Again, if you are competitive and fairly close. And again, I think despite the way that first game went, clearly these 2 teams, talent-wise, are pretty close. But I do think Alabama being without its 2 top receivers, I mean,
totally
that
changes
is
the game.
it completely changes it, because you don't have the home run threat, right? The comfort, and you need that comfort level, right? There's other very talented receivers. I mean, Alabama stocks up.
Sure.
But if it's not the guys that you're working with consistently throughout the game, and that as a quarterback, those plays can be made. And again, the timing on those things is critical. And over the course of a season, right? And you see it with like Deontay Johnson and Big Ben. I mean, it becomes instinctive. All right, I know exactly what this guy's going to do. There might be another guy that even has more talent that's on the bench, but we don't have that same rapport, especially after the course of an entire season being played. And I just think, to me, that ultimately was as big the difference as anything in the result last night. And again, that's not to take anything away from Georgia. You play with what you got, and you've got to go out and execute better than the other team, and Georgia deserves a national championship. But and it's not to say that Georgia wouldn't have been able to do it if Alabama had the 2 wide receivers. But when you lose the type of production that Alabama did at that spot, I don't know. To me, it just as a fan, it takes away from what you wanted to see. You wanted to see the best of the best matching up. And again, very rarely do you get that. There's always injuries, and we're going to see it in the NFL playoffs, and teams are banged up, and we're not going to see it. More injuries are going to happen throughout the playoffs. So, I mean, again, it's just part of the sport, and I understand that. But I don't know. To me, it took a little it should not for Georgia and their fans. And if I was a Georgia fan, I'd be celebrating like crazy. As a neutral observer and somebody, I really did not have a rooting interest. I like both of those teams as far as it goes. I like both of those coaches. I'm not, strongly against either team or university or fan base or anything. And but just as an objective observer, it just took a little something off of the game for me. And it was still, I mean, it was a great game. It was a fun game. I'm sure to watch. It was a fun game to listen to. And right up until the pick 6, right, it felt like this was a game that could be heading to overtime. If Alabama goes in there and scores and gets the 2, we might be talking about one of the all-time great college football finishes.
Yeah, and, to bring things full circle, I'm talking about Pittsburgh matching up with Kansas City again, coming off a blowout loss a few weeks prior. There is, I think, something to the logic that you would rather be blown out than lose a close game. Because at some point, unless you're just a terrible team, if you get your butt handed to you, the way Georgia did by Alabama in the SEC title game, you throw out all the history between those teams and whatever. If you know you're a good team and you just absolutely get your doors blown off, I think it does free you up to just say, hey, you know what? That one got away from us, and at some point or another, like, we were so far behind, we were never going to chase and catch up. So we could just totally flush that and move on. And that, to me, is what the playoff version of this Georgia team looked like.
Yeah.
Like, they were able to very quickly move on from getting wiped out in the SEC title game. I think maybe in part because it was such a
Yeah, and that running game is impressive. I mean, that defense obviously was impressive, and it showed up much bigger last night than it did in the SEC championship game. But I think it was a combination of that and then the running game. And again, they made the plays when they needed to with the passing game as well. But I think when you can run the ball effectively, which is much easier said than done against Alabama, when you can do that the way Georgia did last night, and again, you have the playmakers that they do on the other side of the ball, it certainly gives you a fighting chance. And
formula.
They certainly were able to capitalize on that. And again, hats off to Georgia. Very special season for that program. And
sorry to say, though,
first title in 41 years.
Yeah. I'm sorry to say that with that title, that puts Penn State in the catbird seat of top 15, top 20 programs. There are very few programs in the country. They are legitimately in a position to compete for and win a national championship. We are now sitting on one of the longest, if not the longest, title drought of those programs.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
It has been, and again, to me, next season
and it's going to be much, much longer. I hope to live a long, healthy life, and I am going to be dust to dust before Penn State wins another national championship.
Yeah, I don't know. I can see this thing going either direction here over the next couple of years. I do. I mean, the recruiting class that they're bringing in. Again, I think if you do get a good season, however we define that and that plays out next year, if you can bring in another class similar to that to follow up. I mean, I don't think it's. And again, with the transfer portal and everything else, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that even within a couple of years, Penn State could be right back in the mix there as far as chasing down a national title. And I think it's every bit as likely or possible that Penn State is, we're back to another 5-loss season in a couple of years. And again, people are grumbling about the contract. And that's the other thing. That contract can play out either way too, right? I mean, you can become complacent, and I don't think that's James Franklin's nature. I mean, I don't think he's going to sit there and, okay, well, I've got the money now. I don't either. I can coast. I mean, I don't think that's what's going to happen. But you do have that now as the security blanket behind you. And listen, it can, and I do. I mean, James Franklin has talked about it. Like, I do think he is driven to get this program to a point where it is contending, if not winning, a national title. I just think, again, to me, this is. It just feels like it's teetering, and it could go either way. Is what it fees like to me.
Yeah.
Again, from the outside,
it felt that way to me coming into this season.
Yeah, and I really thought again. Well, I didn't just think it. I mean, what the momentum was there, and again, everything you could feel. Then Clifford's injury, and again, you can argue that they didn't have the quarterback ready, whatever else. We can argue that all day long. But I really no. But
that whole team was playing one way, And then I hate to say it, this is probably maybe this is as tinfoil hat as I'm going to get. It's not a conspiracy theory even, but that team was playing one way. Clay Helton got fired at USC. James Franklin refused to rule out that he was going to go to another program. And I don't care what anybody says now. That was a legitimate flirtation that was going on for months. And like a light switch flipped. That team and James Franklin himself went from months and months of looking dialed in about the future of Penn State football and winning this season to all over the place and playing like crap. So, I mean, again, I'm all for the contract extension. I'm just pointing out, number one, there are no stakes for him. None. Other than his reservoir of political capital to extort us for more neon nonsense will quickly evaporate if he's getting paid $6 million a year and we're winning, but we're paying about $1 million per win, right? Which, by the way coaching salaries have gone is an absolute bargain for Penn State. Either way. But right now, I am not feeling the optimism. Like, I am feeling better about, within 5 years, I picture this nightmare scenario where I feel less awful about renewing my basketball season tickets than I do about football. It just makes me angry.
Well, the
Go Eagles.
Here's the thing, though. How differently, though, does it, and I mean, we'll never know, so it's a fun hypothetical to think about it. But so if Clifford never gets hurt, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but it's different. If you win that Iowa game, and again, I don't know how it'll play. I don't think Penn State runs the table under any scenario. But I mean, that Michigan game was very winnable. Penn State was very competitive against Ohio State. I mean, if Clifford never gets hurt, I don't know. I think this season plays out appreciably differently. I don't think they lose to Illinois at the very least. So that's two more wins. So that now you're talking about 9-3 at the very least. And I think, again, for whatever it's worth, and it's worth nothing. But I think probably you're looking at 10-2 for Penn State. And again, I think there's a very different vibe around the program. And then we're back to the discussion of, how long are we going to sit here and talk about trying to take that final step to being elite? Instead, they've taken a few steps backward here now. And the question is, for me, how quickly can you take those steps back forward and at least get into the discussion again about, okay, can they get back over the hump to being an elite program? And again, this season, again, to me, and I'm not really especially optimistic or pessimistic for me going into next season. I'm really just kind of the guy that's just sitting there, stands with his arms folded. All right, let's see. Show me what you got. Let's see what. And I'm not telling you that it can't turn around quickly. I'm not telling you that it will turn around quickly. I'm telling you, I'm just going to sit back and watch and see what happens, because they have to get some things corrected here, and it has to happen in short order, where I do think it becomes a Herculean task to try to get back into that discussion for Big Ten championships and trying to get into the college football playoffs. We may talk Thursday on what that college football playoff is going to look like down the road here as well. That's likely to change. Real quickly before we wrap up, too, Penn State hockey, just brutal weekend. That game Saturday, I mean, that you just don't see buzzer beaters in hockey like that very often. And listen, they are a little down this year in terms of the talent pool, and I do think obviously it's going to be an important recruiting class coming up here for Penn State. But man, it just it's like they're just finding ways to lose games that are winnable, and it's just frustrating. And I'm sure it's frustrating within. I mean, they're right there, and it's just but to lose a game with 0.2 seconds left in overtime is just you just don't see that very often in that sport. And then just real quickly with Penn State wrestling, obviously a good start to the Big Ten schedule. There's nothing. I suspect both Roman Bravo, Young, and Nick Lee will be back for the Rector's meet here on Sunday, and I do think this thing is rounding into pretty good form here for Penn State with Spencer Lee now out for Iowa. Not that obviously we're wishing that upon any young man, especially somebody that's been as good for the sport as Spencer Lee, but with him out and now with Drew Hildebrandt in here and Brady Berge coming in, and I think it's pretty hard to see at the moment if Penn State stays healthy how the Nittany Lions don't win the championship here at the end of the year.
Was the Berge move, was that in the mix for a while, or did that?
I think Berge. I don't know if anybody else. I was completely caught off guard. Kale was telling us on the bus on the way down about it, and that's the first I had even heard about it. I'm under the impression that Brady, and I don't know this for sure, this is just kind of me reading between the lines in some of the conversations, but I think Brady reached out at some point here over around Christmas time. Okay. And again, I don't know this. I'm just kind of reading between the lines and putting some things together of different things people were saying. But I think reached out, and I think Brady had started to feel the urge to compete again, probably pretty early in this season. And at some point, obviously between then and this past week, and my guess is it was at least a couple of weeks before, reached out and talked about it and got the ball moving in terms of, okay, what all do we need to do to make this happen? And he talked to the South Dakota State coaches for a while about it, and obviously it's all come together. I believe he should be joining the team officially yesterday. I haven't been up to practice yet this week, but I suspect there's at least a chance that he'll be in the lineup on Sunday. If not, and again, he's got to beat out Creighton Edsel, and I don't think that's a given. I really don't. Creighton is wrestling very well right now and has really picked some things up. But Berge obviously has a lot of experience. He's just a really talented kid. If he doesn't go against Rutgers, my guess is that he would be in there the following week.
Oh, okay.
And with Penn State, it's the trip to Michigan and Michigan State. And that Michigan dual meet is going to be a dandy. That is a really good Michigan team that they are putting together this season as well. Hopefully Goon will be back on Thursday. Thank you, as always, Booch, for filling in and giving me optimism.
Score me on my prediction.
Get ready. I'm all ready to give you A pluses. Looking forward now in a way that I wasn't heading into the show today.
I'm telling you.
The Sunday night's matchup in Kansas City. Again, we'll be back on Thursday with another edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show here at Quaker Steak and Lube. Until then, be good and be safe.
Lion Country Kia is offering exceptional deals on your new Kia during Kia's Command the Season event.
We have a nice selection on the 2021 Kia Sportage with various options and prices as low as $26,800, saving you $3,000. Or if you demand big power and towing capacity, slip into one of the 2021 Kia Sorrentos available on our lot, starting at $32,680.
Discover why Kia drivers throughout the area come to Lion Country Kia or visit online at lioncountrykia.com.
Quaker Steak and Lube is throwing open the garage doors and setting up the umbrellas. It's patio season. Come enjoy great food, drinks, and fun in the sun. There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube, but we're really amping up our event calendars for our favorite time of year. Visit thelube.com to find out what's happening at your local lube this season. Lunch, happy hour, dinner, or late night, indoors or outside, at Quaker Steak and Lube, you'll always find big flavors, friendly faces, and lots of fun.
Hi, Johnny Broom here. If you're in the market for a new Hyundai or a pre-owned car, truck, van, or SUV, nobody beats a Blaze Alexander deal. But don't take my word for it.
Hey, Goon says tell him Johnny sent you.
Hey, tell him Johnny sent ya.
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Wait, tell him Juan or tell him Johnny sent you?
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Here at Bill Pickles Tap Room, we say,
tell him Johnny sent you.
And remember,